men. And I use the term in a manly way today because we are still working on the 55K HK. This will be part 10. We're going to put a clutch basket together. Let's start getting this clutch back together again. The first thing I got to do is knock the old bearing race out of there. I hope this works. Oh, coming right out. Beautiful. As you may seem to recall, in an earlier video I said all the rollers fell out. And they fell out through this little notch that was knocked in there somehow or another. Anyway, it's out. Okay, here's some more gee whiz for you. These holes here are drilled all the way through and they come out in the middle. Any oil that gets into the area by this bearing will get slung outboard through these holes and slung outboard. These holes line up with these holes. These holes are drilled all the way through the hub. And come out here. This is how Harley keeps the inside of a dry clutch dry without using an oil seal. Generally, it works fairly well. I've always thought these dry clutches were the best clutches for a Sportster. Okay, here's the new bearing. You know, I could knock it in with a hammer, but these things are kind of fragile. And beating on them, I just don't want to subject it to that. So I'm going to walk it over the hydraulic press and press it in flush with this edge. All right, I'm ready to press the bearing back into the hub. Originally there was a gasket in there. I'm not going to use a gasket. I'm going to use Loctite 518. I've got rivets in the holes just to keep them lined up while it's being pressed on. So let's smear some sealant on there. Off to the press. And there you go, the center hub, the bearing carrier pressed in. Rivets, just to keep it lined up. We'll install the rivets a little bit later. Okay, one of the things that absolutely irritates the shit out of me is the people who make the ratchet plates and the people who make the rivets apparently never ever talk to each other. You'll notice how the head of the rivet doesn't seat nicely into the countersink. That's because the countersink on the ratchet plate is the wrong angle. And of course the ratchet plate is hardened steel, difficult at best to drill. Unless of course you've got a carbide countersink. So I'm going to go countersink these things. And when I get done, the countersink on the rivet head will match the countersink on the ratchet plate so that you will get a good mating between the two surfaces and you won't have point-to-point contact. The rivet head will be making contact hopefully 100% of the way around the ratchet plate. And I'll be using this, a carbide countersinking tool. All right, we're going to pound some rivets. The first thing to notice is I've countersunk the holes with the carbide countersink, and now the rivet fits very nicely down into the countersink hole. It'll have a good connection with the ratchet plate to make sure it doesn't shear off on you. I've got here a little homemade deal I made, and the purpose of it is this. When you're pounding these rivets, you got to have the backside firmly supported or they won't drive right. So this fixture right here holds the head of the rivet in place. I'm going to screw this back out just a little bit. It's adjustable. Okay, there you go. You want the ratchet plate sitting flush, but the head of the rivet supported by that pin sticking out of there. And we're going to be ready to go here in just a moment. And the astute among you will notice that this is a late style ratchet plate on an early clutch, which you could do provided that you change the ratchet gear to go with it. So this should work just fine. And once again, I'm going to put a couple rivets in the holes just to try to help keep it lined up. Whoops. Almost forgot this. That needs to be in there. Let's lose all the rivets. The tricky part, of course, is keeping the head of the rivet on top of the anvil. If I countersink them a little too much, the anvil will drop into the countersink and help locate it. And then this is how I do it. If the rivet gets a little off on you, you could steer it by angling your driver. That one's good. As I'm rotating it, I can feel the head of the rivet catch on the anvil, so I know I'm about right there. Lift it up a little bit, drop it on, and you're all set. Once again, rotating it, it snags. I know I just hit the anvil. I'm good to go. And that, my friends, is how I drive these rivets. That ain't going to come off. When I riveted the ratchet plate on, you guys probably noticed that I only put 6 rivets in. That's because the hub was only drilled for 6, and that's the way K-hubs are. This is, of course, an aftermarket ratchet plate, which has got enough holes for 12 rivets. And I thought to myself, what kind of a lazy bastard won't go back in there and put the extra 6 rivets in? So I did. Exactly the same process as the first time around. Kind of a short video this week, but tune in next week where more fitment issues are discovered in the primary, and I admit I was wrong. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and please subscribe. I am out of here.